Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we really try to cut through all the noise and extract the most important, insightful nuggets of knowledge. We want to give you a genuine shortcut to being well-informed. Today, we're diving into something huge. It's a topic that isn't just, evolving. It's fundamentally reshaping the whole landscape of how we learn. We're talking about generative AI in education. Our source for this deep dive is a really comprehensive report. It's titled The Sentient Classroom, Navigating the Generative AI Revolution in Education. Huh. Well, you might be thinking, generative AI? Okay, yeah, another new piece of tech. We've kind of seen this cycle before, right? Personal computers flooding classrooms, those interactive whiteboards, MOOCs.
Right, they all promise transformation.
Exactly. And while they did change things, this report makes a really powerful argument that generative AI, or GenAI as we'll call it, is, well, profoundly different. It's not just another tool in the box or a slightly different way to deliver the same old content. The report actually calls it an arrival technology.
An arrival technology, I like that.
It implies it's already here, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's been adopted, often organically, by students, by educators too, frankly. And it's really compelling institutions now to react, to adapt. What I find truly fascinating, and what the report hammers home, is how GenAI goes beyond just changing how content is delivered or how you access information. It actually gets into the very nature of content creation itself, how we interact with knowledge. And honestly, it even starts to touch on human cognition, how we think.
Yeah, it really does.
Think about that for a second. This isn't just about classrooms getting, smarter tech. It's about the potential for a sentient classroom, like the title says, where the actual act of thinking alongside AI, creating with AI, becomes a core part of learning.
That's exactly right. And our mission for this deep dive really is to give you that essential understanding. We want to pull out the core insights from this extensive report because it covers so much ground. What really jumps out at me is the report's central point. The outcome here isn't set in stone. Whether GenAI sparks this amazing educational renaissance leading to incredible personalization, maybe creativity we haven't seen before.
That's the dream scenario.
It is. Or if it ends up making existing societal inequities even worse, or, and this is a big concern, maybe fostering cognitive decline. Well, that really depends on us. It depends on the choices we make right now, the policies we put in place. It truly hinges on the pedagogical frameworks, the teaching methods, the ethical guidelines, the big strategic policies we choose to implement. So throughout this deep dive, we're going to try and demystify the technology a bit, look at its huge promise, but also, confront the very real risks head on, and then look at some actionable recommendations for charting a path forward responsibly.
A path that's hopefully transformative in a good way.
Exactly. It's about understanding not just what GenAI is, but what it means for the future of learning, what it means for you, whether you're a student right now, an educator grappling with this, or maybe just curious about how our world is changing so fast.
Absolutely. And to really get our heads around this shift, this idea of the sentient classroom, we need to understand what's under the hood, right? What's powering it. So let's start with part one, the generative engine understanding the technology. Okay, first things first. Let's nail down this fundamental concept the report talks about, moving from prediction to creation. What exactly is generative AI, and how does it really differ from, say, the AI we've been hearing about for years?
Right. So generative AI, or GenAI, is a really distinct and, frankly, incredibly powerful subfield within artificial intelligence. If you think about what we might call traditional AI systems, they're mostly designed for tasks like recognizing patterns, classifying data, maybe making predictions based on the information you give them.
Like recommending a movie or filtering spam.
Exactly that sort of thing. Identifying spam emails, recommending products online, maybe predicting stock market trends. That's traditional AI doing its job analyzing existing data. But GenAI is fundamentally different. Its defining feature, and this is what makes it so disruptive, is its ability to create entirely new original content. Content that actually mimics human creativity.
Mimics human creativity. That's the key phrase.
It is. This isn't just about automating a task we already do. It's about generating completely new possibilities. And this content isn't just text either. It can be images, music, video, even complex software code. This leap, from just analyzing data to actually producing something new, something seemingly original, that's what makes it revolutionary.
That distinction is critical.
Yeah.
Going from prediction to actual creation.
Yeah.
So, okay, how does it actually do that? What's going on inside these large language models, these LLMs, that allows them to generate, say, a poem or an essay?
Well, at their core, most of the GenAI tools we're seeing now, especially the ones dealing with text, are based on large language models, or LLMs, and these are typically built on an architecture called the transformer architecture. Now, these models are trained on just colossal data sets. I mean, it's hard to even picture the scale. We're talking about a huge chunk of the public internet, vast collections of text, websites, books, articles, images, too.
So basically, they've read more than any human ever could.
Oh, by orders of magnitude. But here's a really crucial point the report emphasizes. The model doesn't learn or understand concepts like a human does. It's not sitting there comprehending the philosophical nuances of Plato or the beauty of a mathematical proof.
Doesn't get it.
It doesn't get it in our sense. Instead, through processing this immense amount of data, it builds up this incredibly complex statistical representation of patterns, structures, relationships between words, concepts, even styles of writing. So when you give an LLM a prompt, like asking it to write something, its main function is to predict the most statistically probable sequence of outputs. What's the most likely next word and the next based on everything it's seen.
So it's like super advanced predictive text in a way.
In a very, very sophisticated way, yes. It's calculating probabilities. And this probabilistic mechanism is absolutely key. It's the source of its amazing fluency, why it can sound so human. But ironically, it's also the source of its biggest limitation.
And that limitation is something we hear a lot about, the hallucination problem. Can you break that down? What are AI hallucinations and why are they such a headache, especially in an educational setting?
Right. AI hallucinations. This refers to when a model generates output that sounds incredibly plausible. It might be coherent, well-written, even stated with great confidence. But it's actually factually incorrect or nonsensical. Or sometimes just completely fabricated.
It just makes stuff up.
Basically, yes, it confidently makes things up. And it's absolutely vital for educators, for students, for everyone using these tools to grasp this. This is not a bug. It's not some temporary glitch that engineers are going to iron out eventually.
It's not like a software update will fix it.
No. The report stresses this. It's an inherent feature of its design. Because the model's prime directive, if you like, is to generate statistically probable content, what looks and sounds right based on its vast training data. It will literally fill in the blanks when it doesn't have specific, accurate information for your prompt. It constructs a response that is structurally sound, stylistically consistent with what it's learned, even if the actual substance, the facts, are completely wrong.
Okay, that's slightly terrifying for education.
It has huge implications. Why this matters so much for you, especially in education, is profound. It means our strategies, our rules for using AI cannot be based on waiting around for some future perfectly accurate AI to arrive. That might never happen. Instead, our pedagogical frameworks, our teaching methods, our school policies, they must be built from the ground up, assuming potential inaccuracy, assuming these tools can be wrong.
So job changes.
Massively. The core educational task shifts dramatically. It's no longer just about helping students find information. Google already did that.
Sure.
Now it's about equipping them with the critical evaluation skills needed to rigorously, systematically validate that information, to question it, to cross-reference it.
That's a fundamental reorientation, isn't it? Away from finding answers to judging answers.
Precisely. It's about becoming a discerning consumer, a critical evaluator of information, which is arguably a much higher-order thinking skill. This is central to information literacy in the age of AI.
That's a huge shift. Okay, so we understand the engine a bit better now, including its flaws. How does this new technology translate into actual tools? What does this new educational toolkit look like? What are the applications educators, students, maybe even administrators can actually use day to day? Well, the report really highlights how these GenAI capabilities create a powerful new toolkit, particularly strong in a couple of key areas. First up, and this is a big one, content generation. This is where AI can really, automate and speed up the creation of a ton of educational materials. Think about drafting a syllabus, outlining lesson plans, writing learning objectives, generating quiz questions, creating study guides, flashcards, discussion prompts for class, even rough scripts for video lectures.
That's a lot of teacher workload right there.
Exactly. The potential impact here is immense. It promises to significantly cut down on that administrative burden that teachers are always talking about, freeing up their valuable time for what really matters, direct instruction, working with students one-on-one, providing richer feedback.
More time for the human connection.
Precisely. Imagine a teacher spending less time on the grind of basic material prep and more time actually connecting with you, the student, on an individual level. That's a powerful promise. Another really potent application area is personalized communication. GenAI can act as highly sophisticated chatbots, voice assistants, virtual helpers.
Beyond just FAQs.
Oh, way beyond. This means it can help manage communications at scale. Things like drafting routine emails to parents, sending out school announcements, maybe providing 247 answers to frequently asked questions that always come up. It can even personalize interactions with students or parents based on specific needs or queries. Picture this. You're a student stuck on a homework concept at 11 p.m., and an AI tutor can offer some guidance. Or a parent gets an immediate, tailored response about an upcoming school event instead of waiting for office hours. This could genuinely boost accessibility and responsiveness for the whole school community.
Making support available when and where it's needed.
Yeah, around the clock, potentially. These are just a couple of examples, but you can see how these tools could really start to reshape the daily operations and interactions within education.
And building on that, the report also covers summarization and data synthesis. Think about how much information educators and administrators deal with: research articles, complex policy documents, mountains of student feedback. GenAI can process these large volumes of unstructured data and distill the key insights.
Cutting through the noise again.
Exactly. It helps make sense of it all, enabling faster, more informed decisions. Imagine an administrator getting a quick summary of parent survey results, or a teacher getting key themes from student essays without reading every single word multiple times.
That could save enormous amounts of time.
And then there's creative and analytical support. This goes beyond just automation. GenAI can act as a partner in cognitive tasks. It can help with brainstorming new project ideas, generating creative prototypes for, say, an art class, exploring large data sets to find hidden trends, or even suggesting novel solutions to complex problems.
So it's not just doing the grunt work, it's potentially helping with the thinking work, too.
Precisely. It can be a co-pilot for thinking, which opens up really interesting pedagogical possibilities we'll touch on later. But when it comes to actually choosing which tools to use, what's really interesting, and the report makes this very clear, is that this isn't just a technical decision about features. It's a deeply strategic one.
Strategic? How so?
Well, it has significant pedagogical implications. Does the tool support your teaching philosophy? Financial implications. What does it cost? What's the total cost of ownership? And crucially, ethical implications, particularly around data privacy and bias. The report gives a helpful overview of some of the leading tools out there, highlighting their main functions, who they're aimed at, and importantly, their different approaches to things like student data.
Okay, so give us some examples. What are some of the key players and what are the trade-offs?
Sure. So for instance, you have the big general purpose models like ChatGPT, specifically versions like GPT-4 or 4.0. Hugely versatile for text, code, content creation, brainstorming. It's used everywhere: higher ed, K-12.
Everyone's heard of ChatGPT.
Right. But the catch with the standard public version is that by default, it often uses your input data to further train the model. That's a major privacy red flag for schools dealing with confidential student information. Now, there are enterprise versions or API uses that offer better protection, but the default is a concern.
Okay, so versatility, but potential privacy issues with the free version. What else?
Then you have things like Google Gemini, which is also multimodal text, images, code. A big advantage is its integration with Google Workspace, which many schools already use. Google offers specific versions for education, like Workspace for Education, which come with data protection agreements, so that integration is key.
Makes sense if you're already a Google school.
Definitely. Then there are tools designed specifically for education. Take Conmigo from Khan Academy. It's built as an AI tutor. Its standout feature is using Socratic questioning. It tries to guide you to the answer, not just give it to you. And critically, it's designed with student data protection in mind from the start.
So, built for purpose, with privacy baked in.
Exactly. Or look at something like Squirrel AI, an adaptive learning platform often used more at the institutional level. It uses a hybrid AI and human approach to create really personalized learning paths, again, with data security built for institutional use.
What about tools for specific tasks, like feedback or image creation?
Good question. There's Class Companion, which is an AI feedback tool. Teachers can align it to their specific rubrics, and it helps students through the revision process. Again, education-focused, assignment-specific data handling. And for visual creation, you have AI image generators like Dale E3 or Midjourney. They turn text prompts into high-quality images, great for visual exploration in art, history, science. But again, public use might contribute to model training data, so that's a consideration.
And Microsoft's offering.
Right, Microsoft Copilot. This is positioned as an integrated AI assistant embedded right into Microsoft 365 apps, Word, Excel, Teams. It can do meeting summaries, help draft documents, analyze data. For schools using the Microsoft ecosystem, it offers enterprise-grade data protection within their institutional setup, their tenant.
So the takeaway is there's no single best tool.
Absolutely not. It's about matching the tool to the need and the context. A district laser-focused on data privacy might heavily favor something like Microsoft Copilot within their secure environment, or Conmigo over letting students use the free version of ChatGPT. An art department's evaluation of Midjourney will be totally different from a math department looking at an adaptive practice platform like Squirrel AI.
So you really need to understand the tech, yes, but also the institution's specific educational mission, its values, its risk tolerance.
Precisely. It requires a deep understanding of both. It's a complex decision, not just a technical checkbox.
That comparison really drives home the strategic element here. Okay, let's shift gears slightly and move to part 2. The personalized promise tailoring education at scale. For more than a century, education has largely operated on this kind of industrial scale model. Standardization, everyone moving through the same curriculum at roughly the same pace. It's been efficient in some ways, but often frustratingly rigid.
A factory model, they call it.
Yeah, exactly. But generative AI holds out this tantalizing promise. The potential to finally dismantle that one-size-fits-all approach to enable truly, deeply personalized learning for every single student. Let's dig into what that actually means for you, the learner. Section 2.1, the end of one-size-fits-all. Adaptive learning pathways. How does GenAI actually make this deep personalization a reality? How does it go beyond just, accommodating different speeds to really optimizing the path for each individual?
The core mechanism here, and it's quite powerful, is this idea of a continuous, data-driven feedback loop. Imagine AI-powered learning platforms constantly analyzing a whole stream of real-time data about your performance as a student. We're talking quiz scores, homework results, how long you spend on certain exercises, even patterns in how you interact with digital learning materials, where you click, where you pause.
So it's watching how you learn, basically.
In a sense, yes, it's gathering data points constantly. And based on this ongoing analysis, the AI builds a dynamic, constantly updating profile of your individual strengths, your weaknesses, where your specific knowledge gaps are. This is a huge leap beyond traditional assessments like a midterm or a final exam, which are just snapshots in time. This is more like a continuous EKG of your learning.
Okay, so it builds this detailed profile. Then what?
Then comes the magic of dynamic content adaptation. Based on that incredibly detailed profile, the system can automatically adjust the learning experience for you in real time. So let's say you're struggling with quadratic equations in math. The AI can instantly generate more practice problems specifically targeted at the skill you're missing. Or it might suggest a different video tutorial that explains the concept from another angle. Maybe it presents the idea using a visual analogy instead of just equations.
Tailoring the approach on the fly.
Exactly. Conversely, if you're flying through the material, demonstrating mastery, the system won't hold you back. It can automatically introduce more challenging problems, maybe related advanced topics, to keep you engaged in stretching your abilities.
So it keeps you in that zone of proximal development, as Vygotsky called it.
Precisely. It aims to keep you in that optimal learning zone where tasks are challenging but achievable, and the potential impact is significant. Some studies cited in the report suggest this kind of adaptive learning can boost student engagement by as much as 60%.
60%. That's huge.
It is. And improve information retention rates by up to 20%.
Yeah.
That translates to more effective, more efficient learning for you.
Wow. And you mentioned this isn't just theory, right? This is actually happening now.
Oh, absolutely. This isn't some far-off sci-fi concept. Platforms that many students and educators already use, like Khan Academy with Conmigo or Quizlet with its AI features, are actively integrating these adaptive capabilities. And we're seeing real results, especially in higher education and workforce training, where measurement is often very direct. The report mentions a really striking example from Ivy Tech Community College.
What happened there?
They implemented an AI system that analyzed student data early in the term. Within just the first 2 weeks, it identified something like 16,000 students who were potentially at risk of failing or dropping out based on early engagement patterns and performance.
16,000. That's incredible detection speed.
It is. And crucially, this allowed human advisors to proactively reach out to these specific students, offer support, connect them with resources, and the result. Among the students they were able to contact and support, an amazing 98% ended up passing their courses.
Wow. So the AI identified the need, and the human intervention made the difference.
Exactly. It's a great example of that hybrid model. And beyond just general performance, this personalization becomes a really powerful engine for equity and inclusion. Think about students with disabilities. GenAI can generate tailored materials instantly, maybe converting text to speech, using tools like Amazon Polly for students with reading difficulties, or creating custom visual aids to explain abstract concepts for learners who benefit from visual input.
Adapting the format to the need.
Precisely. And for multilingual learners, imagine the potential. Real-time translation of course materials, interactive grammar, and pronunciation guidance. It can effectively break down those language barriers that have historically made it so much harder for non-native speakers to succeed academically.
It really feels like it's about meeting every single student exactly where they are with what they need.
That's the promise. A truly individualized learning journey, scaled up.
It's a compelling vision. And building on that idea of individualized support, let's explore the next section. 2.2, the 247 Aristotle, AI as personal tutor and mentor. The idea of giving every student their own personal tutor, someone patient, knowledgeable, always available, like you said, a modern-day Aristotle that's been kind of holy grail in education for
Well, forever.
centuries, really, the ideal of individualized instruction.
With Gen AI, this dream suddenly feels technologically feasible, doesn't it?
It really does. Imagine AI tutors offering students academic support 24/7 completely on demand. You're stuck on a problem late at night. You have a question just before a test. The AI tutor is there. It can answer questions, explain complex concepts again and again without getting tired, provide immediate feedback on your work, all outside the usual constraints of the school day or needing to schedule time with a human tutor.
That level of accessibility is unprecedented. It truly is. It could level the playing field in terms of access to support. However, and this is a critical distinction the report makes, we need to be very careful about what kind of tutoring we're talking about.
What do you mean?
Well, an effective human tutor doesn't just give you the answer, they guide you. They ask questions. They help you figure it out for yourself. Think about the difference between just using a calculator to get the solution versus actually understanding the mathematical process behind it.
Right. One leads to learning, the other, maybe just getting the homework done.
Exactly. And some early chatbots, and even some current AI tools, can fall into the trap of being mere answer engines. They just provide the solution, which can actually short-circuit the deeper learning process. You get the answer, but you don't build the understanding.
So how are the newer AI tutors addressing this?
This is where it gets really interesting. The new generation of AI tutors, and Khan Academy's Khanmigo is a prime example cited in the report, are being deliberately engineered for Socratic dialogue. So the underlying instructions for the AI are different. When you, as a student, say you're stuck, the AI is prompted not to just give you the answer. Instead, it's designed to ask you targeted, guiding questions. What have you tried so far? What part of the problem do you think is confusing? Can you explain your thinking there?
So it pushes you to think, to identify your own misunderstanding.
Precisely. It helps you construct your own understanding, which is much more powerful and lasting. It forces that critical thinking and metacognition.
That sounds much more aligned with good teaching practice.
It is. And the role of AI can even extend beyond tutoring into mentorship. Educators can potentially create customized AI personas to offer unique learning experiences. Imagine, say, a history student debating key policy decisions with an AI persona of Abraham Lincoln, trained on his writings and speeches. Or an English literature student interviewing an AI version of Jane Austen about her character's motivations. Or maybe you're conversing with an AI Isaac Newton to really grasp the core principles of physics from his perspective.
Wow, that makes learning sound incredibly active and engaging.
It really does. It transforms learning from just passively receiving information into this active process of inquiry, dialogue, and engagement. It could make abstract concepts much more tangible and memorable for you.
Okay, that's the exciting potential. But the report also sounds a note of caution, right? About the limitations of this personal tutor metaphor.
Yes, absolutely. And this is crucial. Decades of research on what makes human tutoring effective consistently point to two key components. First, there's the cognitive scaffolding, the explanations, the practice, the feedback. And GenAI, as we've seen, can be remarkably good at this. It can generate infinite practice problems, give instant feedback, offer clear explanations in multiple ways.
It sells the cognitive part.
It does, however. The second vital component of effective human tutoring is the social motivational support. The empathy, the encouragement, the relationship.
The human touch.
Exactly. And this is where AI fundamentally falls short. An AI cannot replicate the genuine social and emotional connection you have with a great teacher or mentor. It can't feel genuine empathy when you're frustrated. It doesn't understand the external factors, maybe issues at home, maybe test anxiety that might be affecting your performance. It can't form that long-term caring relationship built on mutual trust and investment in your success.
An AI can't be truly proud of you when you finally get it.
It can simulate praise, but it can't feel pride. It doesn't get tired or impatient, which is an advantage in some ways. But it also lacks that deep human element of shared experience and genuine emotional response.
So what's the strategic conclusion here? If AI can do the cognitive part well, but not the social emotional part.
It leads us directly to what the report suggests is the most effective model. Not AI replacing teachers, but a hybrid model where AI augments them. In this vision, the human educator becomes, you might say, a meta-tutor. They are the architect of your overall learning journey. They select and curate the right AI tools for you to use. And crucially, they step in to provide that essential human-to-human motivational support, the emotional guidance, the deeper mentorship when it's needed most.
So the teacher orchestrates the process, using AI as a powerful tool within it.
Precisely. This approach doesn't aim to automate teaching. It aims to empower teachers. It allows them to leverage AI for what it does best: scale, personalization, tireless practice, while freeing them up to focus on what humans do best: building relationships, fostering critical thinking, providing empathetic support. It really redefines the role of the educator for the 21st century.
That feels like a much more balanced and, frankly, realistic vision. Collaboration, not replacement.
That's the key takeaway.
Okay, that reframing is essential. Now let's pivot slightly to part 3. The student as creator, shifting from consumption to production. This might be one of the most pedagogically exciting shifts that generative AI enables. Its potential to move students away from being just passive consumers of information towards becoming active producers of knowledge.
Yes, moving from intake to output.
Exactly. But giving you access to these incredibly powerful yet increasingly accessible tools for creation, GenAI can lower those traditional barriers to entry in complex fields. Think art, coding, even sophisticated writing. It can empower you to engage in really complex, project-based learning that might have been out of reach before. And this directly tackles that long-standing need in education to move beyond rote memorization and really cultivate those creative, critical thinking, problem-solving skills that everyone agrees are essential for the future.
Skills AI can't easily replicate.
Right. So let's dive into 3.1, Beyond the Blank Page. AI is a creative co-pilot, that blinking cursor on a blank page. It can be pretty intimidating for anyone, right? Whether you're a student facing a big essay or even a seasoned professional starting a new project. How can GenAI help you overcome this hurdle and get more deeply involved in the creative process itself?
Well, these GenAI tools can genuinely act as a co-pilot, a collaborator, across a whole range of disciplines, and this fundamentally changes how you might approach the act of creation. Take the writing process, for example. The focus of teaching writing can pivot quite dramatically. Instead of the sole emphasis being on that final polished essay, the focus can shift much more towards the iterative process of thinking, drafting, and revising.
Making the thinking visible.
Exactly. You can use GenAI, and this is an important distinction, not as a ghostwriter to do the work for you, but as a creative partner. Use it as a brainstorming buddy to generate initial ideas when you feel stuck. Use it as a structural assistant to help you create a logical outline. Use it as a collaborator to maybe rephrase awkward sentences or even generate a rough first draft that you then heavily critique and revise. Or simply use it to break through writer's block by suggesting a starting point.
So the student is still the author, still in control.
Absolutely, you remain the author, the thinker. But the AI can accelerate some of the more mechanical aspects of writing, freeing up your cognitive energy, your brain power, to focus on those higher-level concerns. Developing a compelling argument, finding strong evidence, refining your unique voice and style.
That makes a lot of sense. What about other creative fields, like art or design?
That's another fascinating area. Platforms like Midjourney, Dali, Adobe Firefly, they essentially transform descriptive language itself into a new artistic medium. There's a quote attributed to Michelangelo, something like, "A man paints with his brains and not with his hands." GenAI makes that almost literally true in a new way. The quality of the visual output you get from these tools is directly tied to the richness, the precision, the creativity of the textual prompts you write.
So your words become the paintbrush.
In essence, yes. It creates this powerful, direct link between literacy skills, your ability to describe things vividly and precisely, and visual expression. Suddenly, writing well allows you to draw well, in a sense. Think about the possibilities for you as a student. You could visualize complex scenes from literature for an English class. You could create historically informed images for a history project. You could illustrate abstract scientific concepts in a visually compelling way for biology or physics, just using language.
That opens up creative avenues for students who maybe don't see themselves as traditional artists.
Absolutely. And a similar dynamic plays out in coding and development. AI tools like GitHub Copilot or ChatGPT can act as an expert programming partner. They can generate boilerplate code that's tedious to write, suggest ways to debug tricky problems, even help automate the process of documenting your code.
Taking away some of the drudgery.
Exactly. It offloads some of the more tedious, repetitive aspects of coding. This allows you, the student developer, to concentrate your mental energy on the more challenging and creative parts. Algorithmic thinking, designing the overall system architecture, finding innovative solutions to the core programming problem.
So, across these fields, it seems like AI is lowering barriers.
That's a key theme. The democratization of production. Historically, as you said, fields like visual art, music composition, software development, they've had pretty high barriers to entry based on technical skill. You needed years of practice to draw realistically, deep knowledge of music theory, to compose complex pieces, fluency in demanding programming languages to build sophisticated software.
Not everyone has the time or resources for that specialized training.
Right, but GenAI dramatically lowers these barriers. Now, a student with a really compelling visual concept, but maybe limited traditional drawing skills, can still produce sophisticated, professional-looking artwork using text prompts. A social science student can perform complex data analysis and build predictive models to test a hypothesis without first needing to spend months mastering Python or R programming.
So what does this all mean, big picture?
It means a much broader range of students can now actively participate in acts of creation across disciplines. The focus shifts, allowing you to concentrate more on the quality of your ideas, your conceptual understanding, your critical choices, rather than getting bogged down solely in the mechanics of execution.
It opens up possibilities for really cool interdisciplinary projects, too.
Definitely. But it also forces us to have a serious conversation, a reevaluation of what we mean by skill and originality in student work. If an AI generated the image based on your prompt, who is the artist? If AI helps structure the code, how do we assess your programming ability? The pedagogical focus, the way we teach and assess, must evolve. We need to start valuing and finding ways to measure things like the novelty and insightfulness of your initial concept, your critical judgment in selecting, curating, and refining the AI's output, and the unique perspectives or connections that emerge from your specific human-AI collaboration.
It's about assessing the human contribution in that partnership.
Exactly. It's about leveraging the tool to amplify human creativity and critical thinking, not just accepting the output passively.
Okay, so the definition of making things is changing, and that means the definition of knowing things or being literate must also change. Which brings us neatly to 3.2, the rise of the prompt engineer, new literacies for a new age.
Precisely. As the nature of student work shifts, and as AI tools become capable of generating plausible-sounding answers almost instantaneously, our traditional definitions of literacy, reading, writing, basic research are no longer sufficient.
They're necessary, but not enough.
Right. A new set of competencies is rapidly emerging as essential for you to succeed both academically and professionally in this new landscape.
So what are these new literacies?
Well, the first major shift the report identifies is from answer getting to question asking. Think about it. For generations, education has often implicitly valued finding the right answer quickly. But in a world where AI can often provide an answer, though not always the right or best one, in seconds, the truly valuable intellectual skill is shifting towards formulating the right question. The ability to take a complex problem, break it down, identify the core uncertainty or the specific information needed, and then articulate that as a precise, effective prompt for an AI that is becoming paramount.
This is prompt engineering, right?
That's the term people are using, yes. And the report argues that education must pivot to explicitly teach the skill. It's not just about typing a question into a box. It's about designing your inquiry thoughtfully, iteratively refining your prompts to guide the AI towards generating the most useful, relevant, and accurate output. It's a strategic skill.
Okay, so asking better questions is key. What else?
Next, and we touched on this earlier, critical evaluation as a core competency becomes non-negotiable. Given the inherent unreliability of AI, the potential for bias, for factual errors, for those hallucinations we discussed, you absolutely must be systematically trained to approach all AI-generated content with a healthy dose of rigorous skepticism.
Don't just trust the output.
Never just trust the output blindly. This represents a new, vital form of information literacy for the 21st century. It involves actively fact-checking the AI's claims against reliable, independent sources. It requires diligently trying to identify potential biases in the language or perspective of the output. And fundamentally, it demands understanding the limitations of the technology itself, knowing what it's good at and what it's not.
So you need to be a savvy, critical consumer of AI content.
Exactly. Then there's curation, synthesis, and refinement. The nature of knowledge work is changing. In many fields, the future likely involves less blank slate creation from scratch and more working with initial drafts or ideas generated by AI. Your crucial human role then becomes that of an expert editor, a curator with domain knowledge and critical judgment. You'll be taking potentially disparate pieces of AI-generated information, synthesizing them into a coherent whole, refining the language and structure, fact-checking rigorously, and adding your own unique insights, analysis, or creativity, the elements the AI can't replicate.
So adding the value on top of the AI's first pass.
Precisely. You're the director, the shaper, the one who brings the critical human intelligence to the process. And finally, to prevent AI from becoming just a cognitive crutch that leads to mental laziness, pedagogy needs to actively encourage metacognition and self-reflection.
Thinking about your own thinking.
Yes, you need to be conscious of how you're using the tool and how it's affecting your own learning and thought processes. Assignments can be designed specifically to build this skill. For example, an instructor might require you to submit a process cover sheet along with your final project. On this sheet, you'd have to document and reflect on how you used AI. What prompts did you try? Which ones worked well? Which ones didn't? Where did you find the AI's output to be flawed or biased? And most importantly, how did interacting with the tool ultimately shape your own understanding of the topic and influence your final product?
That forces you to be really intentional about using the tool.
It does. It makes the use of AI transparent and reflective, turning it into a learning opportunity in itself rather than just a shortcut to an answer.
These new literacies, questioning, evaluating, curating, reflecting, they sound absolutely crucial. And developing them clearly requires a shift in teaching. But it also raises huge questions about assessment, doesn't it? Which brings us to 3.3, reimagining assessment, valuing process over product. The simple fact is, the widespread availability of powerful GenAI tools really does render many of our traditional assessment methods,
Well, kind of obsolete, or at least highly vulnerable.
It throws a huge wrench into the works.
It really does. Think about the standard take-home essay, or a problem set that primarily tests recall of basic facts or procedures. Assignments like these, which can now be completed, often to a surprisingly high standard, with just a few well-worded prompts. They're just no longer reliable measures of whether you've actually learned the material or developed the intended skills.
The output doesn't necessarily reflect understanding anymore.
Exactly. And this presents a massive, acute, and widely acknowledged challenge to academic integrity. We're not talking small numbers here. The report cites one study finding that a striking 58% of students admitted to using AI tools dishonestly to complete assignments.
That's a majority.
It is.
Yeah.
And the core problem is that GenAI makes it trivially easy for you to produce that high-quality output, the essay, the code, the calculations, without necessarily engaging in the underlying cognitive work, the learning process itself. This fundamentally challenges our traditional notions of authorship, effort, and originality in academic work. What does it mean for you to have done the work?
And the first reaction from many institutions has been, let's detect it, let's catch them.
Right. The focus goes immediately to detection tools. But the report strongly cautions against relying solely on this approach. Why is that?
Well, quite simply, AI detection tools have proven to be a flawed and inadequate solution. They are notoriously unreliable. They generate a significant number of false positives, meaning they flag human-written text as AI-generated, potentially accusing innocent students.
Which is a nightmare scenario.
Absolutely. And they also produce false negatives, failing to identify text that actually was generated by AI, so they're not even very effective at catching actual misuse. But perhaps the most troubling issue as the report highlights and other research confirms, is that these detectors have been shown to be systematically biased against certain groups, particularly non-native English speakers.
How so?
Their writing styles, which might be perfectly correct but differ stylistically from native norms, maybe using slightly simpler sentence structures or different vocabulary patterns, can sometimes trigger these detectors, leading to unfair accusations. Relying heavily on such tools isn't just ineffective, it carries a serious risk of inequity, of unfairly penalizing students who are already navigating language barriers.
So the detection arms race is not the answer.
It's not a sustainable or fair answer, no. The report argues for a much more robust and enduring path forward, one that involves shifting the focus away from just chasing detection technology towards more fundamental changes in pedagogy and policy.
Back to changing how we teach and assess.
Exactly. As we discussed earlier, this means intentionally redesigning assignments to be inherently more AI resilient. How do you do that? By focusing more on activities that require uniquely human skills and presence.
Like what?
Think about more in-class, supervised activities, dynamic presentations where you have to respond to questions on the spot, collaborative group projects that require real-time interaction, hands-on lab work, debates, and assessments that evaluate the process of your thinking, not just the final product things that simply cannot be easily outsourced to a machine.
So making the learning and thinking visible in ways AI can't fake.
That's the goal. The future of assessment in the age of AI really lies in methods that resist simple automation and that genuinely value the process of learning your journey, your thinking, your engagement, as much as, or perhaps even more than, the polished final output.
So what kinds of assessments fit that bill?
The report points strongly towards authentic, performance-based tasks. These are assessments that require you to apply your knowledge and skills in contexts that simulate real-world situations or professional practice.
Give me some examples.
Robust project-based learning, where you tackle a complex problem over time. Those dynamic presentations and debates we mentioned, hands-on laboratory experiments or design challenges, detailed case study analyses that require nuanced judgment, assignments that demand genuine personal reflection, creativity, and original insight based on your own experiences. In all of these, AI might be a useful tool along the way for research, for brainstorming, for drafting, but it absolutely cannot replace your core engagement, your critical thinking, your unique human contribution.
And assessing the process itself.
Yes, assessing the process, not just the product. This means designing assignments that are scaffolded, broken down into steps, making your thinking visible along the way, grading intermediate deliverables, the quality of your research questions or prompts, your critique of initial AI drafts, the logic behind your revisions, your reflection on the collaborative process with the AI, valuing the journey, not just the destination.
When you look at it that way, GenAI isn't just a threat to academic integrity.
Exactly. Viewed through this lens, GenAI becomes less of a threat to be policed and more of a powerful catalyst for long overdue pedagogical innovation.
It forces the changes that maybe should have happened anyway.
You could argue that. For decades, educational reformers have been pushing for a move away from assessment based purely on rote memorization and standardized tests, towards more authentic assessments that measure higher-order thinking, creativity, collaboration. GenAI basically acts as an accelerant for this shift. It makes moving towards authentic assessment not just desirable, but practically necessary.
So the real challenge isn't just how do we catch the cheaters?
No, the deeper challenge and the bigger opportunity is how do we seize this moment to design more meaningful, more engaging, and ultimately more future-proof ways of evaluating what students actually know and can do? It's a chance to truly elevate what we value and assess in education.
That's a much more proactive and honestly optimistic way to frame it.
It requires effort and change, but yes, it holds potential.
Okay, this requires a significant shift in assessment and pedagogy. It also implies a significant shift for the humans involved, which brings us to part 4. The human in the loop, evolving roles and cognitive risks.
Absolutely. The integration of GenAI into the very fabric of education doesn't just change the tools. It fundamentally reconfigures the roles and responsibilities of the most important people in the system, teachers and students. And this transformation, as the report lays out, presents a kind of dual-edged sword. For educators, there's this potential to shed some of the administrative drudgery and maybe step up into a more strategic, high-impact role. For students like you, it offers incredibly powerful cognitive tools, but it also introduces that very real risk we talked about, the risk of intellectual dependency, of skills potentially atrophying.
Finding the right balance in that new human-computer dynamic seems critical.
It's perhaps the most critical challenge for the future of education. How do we leverage the power without succumbing to the pitfalls?
Let's start with the educators. Section 4.1, the educator as learning architect. You mentioned the traditional sage on the stage model is becoming less viable. How exactly is the teacher's role evolving?
Right. The model where the teacher is the primary fountain of all knowledge, just delivering information. That's increasingly hard to sustain when GenAI can generate explanations, summarize context topics, and create learning content almost instantly. So the report is very clear. The role of the educator isn't being eliminated, far from it. But it is undergoing a profound evolution. The metaphors shift. We move towards the teacher as a learning architect, designing the overall experience, or a guide on the side, facilitating student discovery, or even a co-creator of knowledge alongside students and AI tools.
The less delivering content, more designing and guiding the learning.
Precisely. It's a significant shift in identity, in daily practice, and in the skills required. The report actually outlines 4 potential roles or stances teachers might adopt as they integrate GenAI. There's the observer, aware of AI, maybe apprehensive but not really using it yet, perhaps due to lack of training or institutional support. Then the adopter, starting to use AI for basic efficiency tasks, maybe drafting emails, creating simple lesson plan outlines, finding resources, getting their feet wet. Moving up, there's the collaborator, actively integrating AI into their teaching methods to enhance student learning using AI for personalized feedback, designing creative projects involving AI, leveraging AI tutors. And finally, the innovator, really pushing the boundaries, co-creating entirely new pedagogical approaches and unique learning experiences with AI, perhaps even contributing to the development of educational AI tools.
So, a spectrum of engagement. What are the key responsibilities that define this future educator role, the things that really require human skills?
The report emphasizes several core responsibilities that become even more important in an AI-infused environment, tasks that rely on uniquely human judgment and interaction. First, curating AI tools and content. This is huge. It's not just about using any AI tool, it's about carefully selecting, vetting, maybe even customizing the right tools and the content they produce to ensure they align with the curriculum, learning objectives, and the specific needs and developmental levels of your students. It requires pedagogical expertise and critical discernment.
Being the quality control, essentially.
In large part, yes. Second, facilitating human-centered learning. As AI takes over some information delivery, the teacher's role increasingly shifts towards designing and leading experiences that cultivate skills AI can't easily replicate. Think rich in-person collaboration, nuanced group discussions, complex ethical debates, and crucially, fostering social-emotional learning, SEL, empathy, self-awareness, relationship skills. These become premium skills.
The stuff that makes us human.
Exactly. Third, mentoring and coaching. This goes back to that human touch we discussed. Teachers provide the nuanced, empathetic, emotionally intelligent guidance that AI tutors, however sophisticated, simply lack. They can read the subtle cues your body language showing frustration, a flicker of disengagement, and provide that crucial motivational boost, that personalized encouragement, that understanding of your individual context. This deep, personal connection is irreplaceable.
Heart of teaching, really.
Many would say so. And finally, a very practical but important aspect. Reducing administrative burden. Future-focused educators will strategically leverage AI to automate those time-consuming, often soul-crushing administrative tasks, grading multiple-choice quizzes, generating routine parent communications, adapting existing materials for different reading levels or learning needs. Freeing up significant amounts of time for what truly matters. High-impact, direct interaction with you, the student. More one-on-one conferencing, more small group work, more personalized feedback, more relationship building. It allows teachers to focus their energy where it makes the biggest difference on the human elements of teaching.
That sounds like a much more fulfilling role for teachers, too. But you mentioned a gap. This requires significant training, right?
No, absolutely. This transformation isn't going to happen by magic. It demands a massive, sustained investment in high-quality professional development. The report points out a significant gap right now between the potential of AI and the current preparedness of the teaching workforce.
Most teachers haven't been trained in this.
Surveys consistently show that a majority of teachers have received little, if any, formal training on how to effectively and ethically integrate AI into their practice, even though these tools are rapidly appearing in their students' hands and increasingly in their schools.
That's a critical bottleneck.
It is. Recognizing this, we are starting to see some large-scale initiatives emerge. The report mentions things like the National Academy of AI Instruction, which is a partnership involving major tech companies and teachers' unions aiming to train hundreds of thousands of K-12 educators on AI. This kind of investment in building human capacity, in upskilling our educators, is absolutely paramount if we want to realize the positive potential of AI in education.
That support for educators is clearly non-negotiable. But now we need to confront the other side of that human-computer dynamic, the potential risks for the learner. Let's turn to 4.2, the risk of cognitive atrophy, a neurological and pedagogical inquiry. While GenAI offers this amazing convenience, this power to offload tedious mental tasks, the report warns this convenience comes with a significant and, frankly, quite worrying risk, the potential for cognitive atrophy. Our brains getting lazy, essentially.
It's a serious concern, grounded in how our brains adapt.
And this idea of cognitive offloading, relying on an external tool instead of our own brains, it's not entirely new, is it? We've seen things like the Google effect.
Right, the finding that people are less likely to remember information if they know they can easily look it up online. Our brains outsource the memory storage to the device.
But the report suggests GenAI takes this to a whole new level.
It does. The sheer power, versatility, and ubiquity of GenAI amplify this concern significantly. The worry is that if we become overly reliant on these tools for tasks that used to require critical analysis, complex problem solving, information synthesis, or even just basic writing composition, those essential cognitive skills might actually erode over time. We risk losing the ability to do certain kinds of thinking for ourselves.
And this isn't just theoretical hand-wringing, right? There's actual evidence emerging.
Unfortunately, yes. The concern is being supported by emerging neurological and behavioral research. The report highlights a particularly striking 2025 study from MIT.
What did they do in that study?
They used electroencephalography, EEG, to monitor the brain activity of participants while they were performing an essay writing task. Some wrote unaided, others used ChatGPT for assistance.
And the results?
They were pretty stark. Compared to writing without AI assistance, the participants who used ChatGPT showed, on average, a 32% decrease in relevant cognitive load.
Wait, less cognitive load sounds good, doesn't it? Less effort?
You'd think so, but relevant cognitive load in this context refers to the necessary intellectual effort involved in transforming information into actual knowledge, organizing ideas, making connections, structuring arguments. Reducing that effort too much means the brain isn't doing the work required for deep learning and memory consolidation.
So less effort equals less learning.
That's the implication. And this decrease in cognitive load was accompanied by something else quite dramatic. A near halving of brain connectivity in specific frequency bands, alpha and theta, that are known to be strongly associated with learning, memory formation, and focused attention. Their brains were literally less engaged in the learning process.
Alarming.
It gets worse. Perhaps the most alarming finding from that MIT study was this. An astonishing 83% of the participants who had used the AI to help write their essays were subsequently unable to recall the substance of the passages they had just produced.
They couldn't remember what they'd just written.
Largely, no. It indicates a profound disconnect between the act of generating the text with AI assistance and actually comprehending or internalizing the information. You produced it, but you didn't learn it. This isn't just about getting a grade. It fundamentally questions whether learning even occurred.
And does this cognitive impact show up in academic results?
There's correlating evidence suggesting it does. Other research cited in the report has found negative correlations between the frequency of students' academic AI use and their scores on critical thinking assessments, like those based on Bloom's taxonomy of higher-order thinking skills. Furthermore, other studies have found that academic reliance on GenAI is negatively correlated with students' sense of academic self-efficacy, their belief in their own ability to succeed, and their overall academic performance. And disturbingly, it's positively correlated with feelings of learned helplessness.
Meaning students feel like they need the AI to cope.
Exactly. They start to feel dependent on the tool, which can undermine their confidence in their own abilities and potentially create a cycle where they rely on it more and more, further hindering the development of their own independent skills.
Okay, that's a pretty sobering picture. Is cognitive decline just inevitable if we use these tools?
No, and this is the absolute crucial understanding the report drives home. Cognitive atrophy is not an inevitable consequence of the technology existing or even being used. It is a direct result of how the technology is used.
So it depends on the approach.
Entirely. The danger lies squarely in the passive consumption mode, using AI simply as an answer generator, a tool to bypass intellectual effort, to get the task done without really thinking. That mode of use is clearly linked to the negative cognitive and academic outcomes we're seeing in the research.
So what's the antidote? How do we use AI without risking this decline?
The antidote, the report argues forcefully, lies squarely in pedagogy. It's about designing the learning environment and the tasks within it, an educational framework that deliberately demands active, critical engagement with AI can transform the tool. Instead of being a cognitive replacement, it becomes a cognitive stimulant.
How does that work in practice?
When you, as a student, are required to actively deconstruct the task and formulate precise prompts, when you have to critically evaluate the AI's output, searching for flaws, biases, and inaccuracies, and then when you must use your own knowledge, your own critical thinking to refine, remix, and build upon that initial AI draft, you are forced to engage in exactly the kind of higher-order thinking that builds strong, durable cognitive skills.
So, wrestling with the AI's output makes your brain stronger.
In essence, yes, that active critical engagement uses the AI to provoke thought, not to substitute for it. It becomes an intellectual sparring partner, not just an easy answer machine. It's about using the tool to deepen your thinking, not avoid it.
That makes the role of the educator absolutely critical again.
It places the responsibility squarely on the shoulders of educators and the policymakers who support them. The central debate, therefore, shouldn't be a simplistic one about banning versus permitting AI tools. Bans are often impractical and ignore the potential benefits anyway. The most critical point of intervention, the place where we can make the biggest difference, is in the design of teaching methods and assessment strategies. Educational policy must prioritize the development, the training in, and the widespread sharing of these AI-resilient pedagogical approaches that foster deep critical engagement.
So the real threat isn't the AI itself.
The greatest threat to student cognition, the report concludes, is not the existence of generative AI, it's the potential failure of our educational institutions to adapt their methods thoughtfully and proactively in response to it. The onus is really on us, the humans in the system, to guide the integration of this powerful technology wisely.
A powerful call to action indeed. And guiding it wisely means confronting not just the cognitive risks, but a whole host of other challenges. That brings us to part 5, the governance gauntlet navigating the labyrinth of risks. Because the incredible potential of generative AI that we've discussed, the personalization, the creativity, the efficiency, it's all inextricably linked to this really formidable set of ethical, legal, and practical challenges.
They come as a package deal.
They really do. And for schools, for universities, for any educational institution to harness the benefits responsibly, they absolutely have to proactively navigate this gauntlet of risks. We're talking about algorithmic bias, student data privacy, academic integrity. Failure to manage these carefully could lead to a future that isn't more equitable and effective, but one that actually amplifies the problems we already have and maybe even creates entirely new ones.
It requires careful steering.
Definitely. Let's start with a big one, 5.1, the bias in the machine, confronting inequity and algorithmic prejudice. It's so important to remember, as you said earlier, that these GAI models aren't neutral, objective sources of truth.
Far from it.
They're fundamentally reflections of the massive data sets they were trained on. And because those data sets are mostly scraped from the internet, they inevitably absorb and critically can amplify the historical and societal biases present in the world that created that data.
Garbage in, garbage out, essentially. Or maybe bias in, bias amplified out.
That's a good way to put it. This often results in AI systems having a worldview that is heavily dominated by, say, white, male, Western, English language perspectives. It means they systematically underrepresent or misrepresent other cultures, languages, genders, viewpoints.
And in education, that embedded bias isn't just an abstract problem. It can lead to really damaging, discriminatory outcomes for students. The report highlights some stark warnings, real-world examples.
Like what? What happens when this bias hits the classroom?
Well, consider the infamous 2020 UK grading scandal. Remember, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, traditional exams were canceled. The UK government decided to use an algorithm to predict student grades instead.
Based on what?
The algorithm relied heavily on factors like the historical academic performance of the student's school. And what happened was, the model systematically and disproportionately penalized students from schools in lower-income communities. It essentially downgraded their predicted grades compared to peers with similar individual profiles but who attended schools in more affluent areas with better historical results.
So it punished students for which school they attended.
Effectively, yes. It baked in historical socioeconomic disadvantage. The result was a massive national outcry, huge protests, and eventually the government was forced to scrap the entire system and revert to teacher assessments. It was a textbook case of algorithmic bias having devastating real-world consequences for young people's futures.
A truly cautionary tale. Are there other examples?
Yes, the report points to other concerning trends. For example, biased course recommendations. A 2023 study looked at several major e-learning platforms and found their recommendation algorithms were statistically more likely to suggest advanced STEM courses, science, tech, engineering, math, to male students than they were to female students or students from underrepresented minority groups.
Why would they do that?
It likely wasn't intentional malice in the code. It was probably a reflection of the historical enrollment patterns present in the platform's training data, but the effect is insidious. It creates this feedback loop that could inadvertently perpetuate the very gender and racial gaps in STEM fields that we're trying so hard to close. The AI reinforces the status quo.
And the report also mentioned pedagogical bias.
Yes, a 2024 analysis found that when AI tools were asked to generate lesson plans, they predominantly promoted rather outdated, teacher-centered pedagogical approaches. Think lectures, rote practice. They tended to limit opportunities for student agency, collaborative learning, or open-ended dialogue. Again, likely reflecting the prevalence of such materials in their training data, but potentially steering teachers away from more modern, student-centered methods.
Wow. So the bias isn't just demographic, it can be pedagogical too.
It can be embedded in the very structure of the educational content it generates.
And all these bias issues are made even worse by the digital divide, right?
Absolutely. These inherent algorithmic biases are significantly compounded by the persistent problem of unequal access. Access to reliable high-speed internet, access to modern computers or tablets, access to the premium versions of these AI tools themselves. It's not evenly distributed. This risks creating or widening a new kind of two-tiered educational system. You could have well-resourced schools and affluent students using AI as a powerful supplement to excellent human teaching, really augmenting their learning and creativity. While under-resourced schools, perhaps facing teacher shortages or budget cuts, might feel pressure to rely on AI as a cheaper, quick-fix replacement for human interaction and support. And the result? You could inadvertently widen already existing, often deeply entrenched achievement gaps based on socioeconomic status, race, or geography.
That's a deeply concerning prospect. So how do we address this? How do we fight the bias in the machine?
It's incredibly challenging, partly because of the black box problem. The inner workings of these highly complex AI models are often opaque, even sometimes to their creators. This makes it exceedingly difficult for educators or independent researchers to effectively audit them for bias or truly understand why they produce certain outputs.
So you're forced to just trust the tech companies.
To a dangerous extent, yes. It creates a heavy reliance on the claims and internal testing of the technology providers themselves. And while efforts are underway to de-bias models, it's technically complex, and it raises philosophical questions to de-bias towards whose values. Which perspective is considered neutral?
There's no easy answer there.
There really isn't. But what is clear, and what the report strongly recommends, is that educational institutions must make transparency and auditability core requirements when they're procuring AI tools. Policy needs to catch up. It should mandate that any AI system used for high-stakes educational decisions, things like grading, admissions, student support recommendations, must have mechanisms that allow for explanation and auditing. We need to be able to interrogate the why.
So the goal isn't necessarily a perfectly bias-free tool, because that might be impossible.
It might be. The more realistic and actionable goal is to implement the systems, the policies, the human oversight processes needed to actively identify, understand, and mitigate the biases that will inevitably exist in these powerful tools. It's about managing the risk, not pretending it doesn't exist.
That transparency seems key, not just for bias, but also for privacy. Which brings us to 5.2, the privacy paradox, balancing data-driven personalization with student safety.
Exactly. This is another fundamental tension right at the heart of educational AI. As we discussed, the incredible power of AI to personalize learning, to create those adaptive pathways, is fueled by data. Lots and lots of student data. To tailor the experience effectively, these systems need to collect and analyze enormous quantities of information about you, your academic performance, your learning behaviors, maybe even interaction patterns, potentially sensitive demographic data. This creates the paradox. The very data collection that makes AI so educationally promising also creates massive privacy and security risks.
Because all that student data stored in one place becomes a target.
An incredibly high-value target, yes. Think about it. Detailed academic records, behavioral notes, potentially personal identifiers for thousands or millions of students. That's a gold mine for malicious actors, for identity thieves, for others with nefarious intent. And we've already seen worrying breaches at edtech companies. The report mentions the 2020 hack of ProctorU, the online exam proctoring service, which exposed the records of over 444,000 students. These systems are vulnerable.
And the risk is maybe even greater with Gen AI tools.
It can be, especially with the publicly available tools. As we noted earlier, many explicitly state in their terms of service that the data you input your questions, the essays you ask it to review, the code you submit is used to train and refine the global AI model.
Meaning it's not private.
By definition, no. If you're inputting sensitive student information, personally identifiable details, or confidential school matters into these public tools, that information is potentially contributing to the global model's knowledge base, accessible in aggregate ways, and certainly not kept within a secure, private institutional boundary unless you're using specific enterprise versions with strong contractual guarantees. This is a huge concern for schools needing to protect student data under laws like FERPA.
And the threats are evolving too, right? You mentioned deepfakes.
Yes, the threat landscape itself is becoming more sophisticated because of GenAI. Cyber criminals can now use these tools to craft incredibly convincing, highly personalized spear-phishing emails. Imagine an email that looks like it's from your principal, referencing specific school events or colleagues, perfectly mimicking their writing style, designed to trick you into clicking a malicious link or revealing sensitive information.
Much harder to spot than the old clumsy scams.
Much harder. And the potential for deepfake audio or video adds another layer. Imagine a fake voicemail message that sounds exactly like the superintendent asking for urgent financial information. These AI-powered social engineering attacks pose a significant new risk to the security of school systems and data.
And the rules and regulations are struggling to keep up.
They really are. The report notes that as of early 2025, only about 22 U.S. states had issued any formal guidance specifically on the use of AI in education. This leaves most school districts trying to navigate this incredibly complex new territory largely on their own. They have to interpret existing federal laws like FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, which governs educational records, and COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, which applies to online services collecting data from children under 13. But these laws weren't written with GenAI in mind, and districts often lack the specialized legal or technical expertise to apply them effectively in this new context. It creates a really fragmented and often inadequate landscape for protecting student privacy.
That's a huge governance gap. And it ties directly into the final major risk area. 5.3, the integrity crisis. Redefining honesty in the age of AI. This challenge to academic integrity is perhaps the most immediately felt, the most widely acknowledged crisis sparked by GenAI in education. It's something educators, students, parents are all grappling with right now.
It hit like a tidal wave.
It really did. And the core problem, as we've established, is just how easy GenAI makes it for you, the student, to produce high-quality output, that essay, that code, those calculations, often without genuinely engaging in the underlying learning, without doing the intellectual work.
It decouples production from understanding.
Perfectly put. And this throws our traditional ideas about authorship, individual effort, and originality completely up in the air. What does it mean for you to submit work as your own in this new era?
And again, the scale of the issue is significant. That finding that 58% of students admitted to using AI dishonestly for assignments, that tells you this isn't just a fringe issue, it's becoming normalized for many.
So we've established that the initial reaction focusing on detection tools is flawed and problematic.
Unreliable, biased, not a sustainable solution.
Right. So if detection isn't the answer, what is the robust, sustainable path forward for upholding academic integrity?
It has to be a combination of pedagogical change and clear policy. We've talked a lot about the pedagogical side. Redesigning assignments to be AI resilient. Focusing on those in-class activities, the presentations, the process-based assessments where students have to demonstrate their thinking in ways machines simply can't replicate, making the human element indispensable to success.
Shifting the assessment focus.
Exactly. But that has to be coupled with clear, explicit, and well-communicated institutional policies regarding the use of AI.
So setting the rules of the road.
Yes. And crucially, the trend seems to be moving away from outright bans, which are proving largely unenforceable. Students have access to these tools on their phones, at home, and often impractical, as AI becomes integrated into standard software like Microsoft Word or Google Docs.
So not banning, but managing.
Managing ethically. Many institutions are now moving towards a model that explicitly treats AI as a powerful tool, one that can be used, but must be used ethically and transparently, and must be cited properly, just like any other source.
Like citing a book or a website.
Precisely. The key shift here is towards mandatory disclosure, requiring students to clearly and specifically disclose when they used a GenAI tool, how they used it. For example, for brainstorming, drafting, editing, and for what purpose in their submitted work.
So it's not about hiding it, it's about being upfront.
Exactly. This reframes the issue. It shifts the focus from solely catching cheating to fostering a culture of responsible, transparent academic practice. Using AI isn't automatically dishonest, failing to disclose its uses. It becomes about proper attribution and intellectual honesty in this new context.
That seems like a much more realistic and educationally sound approach for the long term.
It requires clear communication and consistent enforcement. But yes, it aligns better with the reality of the tools available and focuses on the underlying principles of academic integrity.
Okay, we've covered the technology, the promise, the evolving roles, and the significant risks. Let's try to bring this all together in our conclusion and look at some strategic recommendations. This really feels like a pivotal moment for education.
It absolutely is. To recap, the core message from the Sentient Classroom report and from our discussion is that generative AI isn't just another incremental tech update. It's not a passing trend. It represents a truly foundational technological shift that is already irrevocably altering the educational landscape. And it's a classic example of a dual-use technology. Deployed thoughtfully, with care and foresight, grounded in sound pedagogy, it genuinely has the potential to be this powerful engine for creating more personalized, more equitable, more engaging learning experiences for you. It could empower both students and teachers in really exciting ways.
But the flip side,
But the flip side is also very real. Deployed carelessly, without adequate foresight, without strong ethical guardrails and governance structures, it risks becoming a vehicle for that cognitive decline we worried about. It could deepen societal inequities, creating that two-tiered system, and it could fundamentally erode academic integrity and trust.
so the outcome isn't guaranteed.
Not at all. The report is emphatic on this point. The ultimate trajectory of AI in education is not a matter of technological determinism. It's not pre-written in the code. It will be the result of strategic choices, the policies we enact, the pedagogical approaches we adopt, the ethical principles we prioritize. These will shape the future. It's up to us.
So what does the responsible path forward look like? What's the guiding principle?
The report strongly advocates, and global bodies like UNESCO concur, that the most viable and ethical path forward is one that embraces a fundamentally human-centered approach to AI integration.
Human-centered. What does that mean in practice?
It means that all decisions about implementing AI technology in education must be subservient to and evaluated against the core humanistic values that should underpin education itself. Things like promoting human agency and critical thinking, ensuring equity and inclusion for all learners, protecting individual rights and privacy, and fostering those crucial social-emotional skills that allow us to connect and collaborate as humans.
So the tech serves the people, serves the learning goals,
Yeah,
not the other way around.
precisely. The technology must serve the pedagogy. The pedagogy should never be twisted simply to accommodate the technology. That humanistic foundation is paramount.
And UNESCO has a framework for this.
Yes, UNESCO has developed a really authoritative and internationally recognized 8-point framework specifically for AI in education. It provides excellent concrete guidance for policymakers, school leaders, educators, and for you, the listener, to understand what needs to be considered. We don't have time to go through all 8 in detail, but maybe highlight a couple of crucial ones.
Please do.
Okay, 2 that really stand out. First, promote inclusion, equity, and diversity. This isn't just about avoiding bias, it's proactive. It means actively working to ensure equitable access to AI tools and the connectivity needed to use them. It means establishing clear criteria during procurement and implementation to identify and eliminate potential gender, linguistic, or cultural biases in the systems. And it means pushing for the evolution of AI models to actually include more data from minority languages and cultures so they better reflect the diversity of the learners they serve.
Making sure AI works for everyone. one.
Exactly. Second crucial point, protect human agency. This requires a careful balancing act. We need to integrate AI where it enhances learning, but also be willing to selectively restrict its use in situations where relying on it would deprive learners, deprive you of essential opportunities to develop core cognitive skills, like writing unaided sometimes, or crucial social skills through direct human interaction. It's about ensuring AI remains a tool that augments your thinking and capabilities, not one that replaces them or diminishes your autonomy.
That framework sounds like a really valuable guidepost. Based on that human-centered approach, what are the key actionable recommendations the report offers for educational leaders and policymakers? What do they need to do? And what should you, our listener, understand needs to happen? Well, building on that foundation, the report lays out several clear, actionable recommendations. Let's highlight 5 key ones. First, and this echoes our entire conversation, prioritize pedagogy over technology. This is arguably the single most vital investment needed right now, a massive ongoing commitment to high-quality, continuous professional development for educators. And this training needs to go way beyond just teaching teachers how to use a specific app.
Needs to be deeper.
Much deeper. It needs to focus on developing those advanced pedagogical skills we've discussed. How do you design genuinely AI-resilient assessments? How do you facilitate nuanced, critical discussions about AI-generated content in your classroom? How do you effectively transition your own role towards being that learning architect or guide on the side? That's the core work.
Absolutely critical.
Second, develop clear and adaptive policies. Institutions, schools, districts, universities must establish and then clearly communicate comprehensive guidelines. These need to cover the ethical use of AI, updated academic integrity standards that account for AI, and robust data privacy protocols. But here's the crucial part. These policies cannot be written once and then put on a shelf.
The tech moves too fast for that.
Exactly. They must be treated as living documents. They need to be subject to regular review, debate, and revision by a diverse committee, including teachers, students, administrators, tech specialists, parents, to ensure they keep pace with the incredibly rapid evolution of AI technology and its implications. They have to be adaptive.
Constant vigilance.
Third, mandate transparency and data sovereignty. This is about leveraging purchasing power and policy. When institutions are selecting and contracting for AI tools, leaders must demand contractual guarantees around data privacy. Specifically, they need ironclad assurances that sensitive student data will not be used for training external global AI models. And they need to push for the greatest possible degree of algorithmic transparency.
Knowing how decisions are made.
Yes. The ability for human oversight, and where feasible, independent auditing of AI decision-making processes should be a non-negotiable requirement for any tool used in high-stakes educational contexts, like grading or resource allocation. This protects students and ensures basic accountability.
Holding vendors accountable.
Fourth, champion equity and accessibility. Addressing the digital divide has to be a central strategic priority, not an afterthought. Leaders must actively work to ensure that all students, regardless of background or location, have equitable access to the necessary devices, reliable internet connectivity, and the AI tools themselves. Furthermore, every AI implementation needs to undergo a thorough equity audit before rollout to anticipate and mitigate the risks of perpetuating existing biases or creating new disadvantages for marginalized groups. Equity has to be designed in from the start.
Can't be bolted on later.
Exactly. And finally, fifth, foster a process, not product culture. This comes back to assessment and pedagogy. The report argues this is ultimately the most effective long-term defense against both academic dishonesty and that passive cognitive atrophy we fear. Leaders need to actively champion a cultural shift within their institutions, moving away from solely evaluating the final output of student work towards assessment models that explicitly value, measure, and reward your learning process.
How you got there matters.
It matters hugely. Valuing your inquiry, your critical thinking skills, your creativity, your ability to collaborate, and your reflective engagement with AI as a tool throughout that process. That's where the real learning happens, and that's what we need to assess.
Those 5 recommendations provide a strong roadmap.
They really do. So as we wrap up this deep dive, trying to make sense of the sentient classroom, it's really important to acknowledge one final thing the report touches on: the current scarcity of robust, independent, long-term research on generative AI's actual effects.
We're building the plane while flying it, in many ways.
That's a great analogy. We have lots of potential benefits, lots of identified risks, lots of pilot programs, but we lack deep longitudinal studies on how these tools truly impact student learning outcomes over time, how they affect cognitive development in the long run, and whether they ultimately help or hinder educational equity on a systemic level. This is a massive gap in our evidence base.
We need more data, more research.
Urgently. The report calls for a concerted collaborative effort involving researchers, educators on the ground, institutions, policymakers, even the tech companies to build this cumulative evidence base.
Yep.
We need shared knowledge, shared data, handled ethically, of course, to guide the ongoing evolution of AI in education.
So we can make informed choices, not just guesses.
Exactly. This shared understanding will be absolutely essential to guide the responsible, ethical, and hopefully truly transformative evolution of education in what we really can now call the sentient classroom of the future. And that leaves us, and you, with a final thought to consider. Given everything we've explored today, the personalization, the creativity, the risks of bias, atrophy, integrity issues, what stands out to you is the single most crucial, most urgent area for this future research to focus on? Where do we most need answers to navigate this revolution wisely? Something to think about.